2 interviews, 2 disasters, but only one of them knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway. Where one forgot the facts, the other rewrote them, and both of them walked into interviews thinking they could wing it. What followed? Well, was 2 political train wrecks, but for very different reasons, and I'm going to show you why. So let's start with Emma Reynolds. Emma's interview wasn't so much a policy announcement, but more an endurance test in public embarrassment. She couldn't remember where the Lower Thames crossing started, or ended. She couldn't say how much it cost. She confused Dartford with Dartmouth, and then tried to laugh it off like it wasn't the central project of the entire interview.
And obviously the congestion around the Dartmouth Tunnel is a real problem for getting lorries moving between the north and the Midlands and the ports in the southeast.
Dartford Tunnel, I think.
Sorry, I meant Dartford. Excuse me. Dartford Tunnel.
It's Dartmouth, that would be one hell of a crossing, that one.
It's because I'm obsessed with that part of the world. I meant Dartford, excuse me. I had a very early morning.
I know the feeling.
Dartford Tunnel. Yes, I'm sure you did too.
Just remind listeners where the new crossing is, where it takes off and where it lands.
It's... you'll forgive me, I can't recall the exact landing zones.
So the crossing that you're talking about, you don't know where it is?
Well, it's the Lower Thames crossing,
yes,
which has been in planning for many, many years, and it is to enable, essentially, people to not have to take the Dartford Tunnel. That's what
it's almost as if you were reading from a piece of paper there, isn't it? you don't actually know where it takes off from or where it lands, do you?
You'll forgive me, Nick, but this is part of a broader 10-year infrastructure strategy that we will be launching later this week.
I don't want to go on about this, but it is about the 19th word in the press release, the Lower Thames crossing. Let me tell you, Gravesend in Kent, Tilbury in Essex, those are the 2 towns.
Tilbury, yeah. It was Tilbury that I couldn't... Yeah.
How much is it going to cost?
Yeah. Well, it's going to cost quite a lot of money, but we today are announcing £590 million towards that cost. We'd already put some money in the autumn budget into this project.
But how much is the crossing going to cost, Secretary?
Well, overall, it's going to cost several £billion.
How many? You don't know that either, do you, actually?
Well... it has already cost quite a lot of money.
I don't wish to be rude to you personally. Is there much point continuing this conversation? Because you don't know where a bridge starts, you don't know where it ends, and you don't know how much it costs. So is there any point continuing?
It was rough, but here's the thing. Emma didn't lie. She didn't spin. She was just clearly unprepared. It was like watching someone realise mid-sentence they've gone into the wrong exam. But while Emma was struggling, Nick Ferrari wasn't trying to understand the policy. He was just trying to humiliate her. This isn't journalism.
You don't know how much it is.
Well, it's several billion, as I've said.
It's 10 billion, to put you out of your misery.
10 billion.
Yeah, so it's not several, it's 10. What does this say about the economic stewardship of this country, that someone in your position of importance, you don't know where a bridge starts, you don't know where it ends, and you don't know how much it costs? What does that say to you?
Well, I'm here to talk about the broader infrastructure plan as well that we will be launching later this week.
Well, for the benefit of my listeners, I will continue. When will the Hammersmith Bridge problem be resolved?
I'm not here to talk about the Hammersmith Bridge.
Gotcha secured, job done, interview over. So then we look at Chris Philp, or as someone started calling him Gulper, because when he's lying, the man gulps like he's trying to swallow his own talking points. He wasn't unbrief. He wasn't confused. He was just flat out dishonest. Philp tried to pin the blame for delaying the National Grooming Gang inquiry entirely on Keir Starmer, claiming that Starmer had to be dragged kicking and screaming. But the Conservative Party had been in power for 14 years, and Wilfred Frost, he wasn't having any of it.
And Keir Starmer has at last agreed, but he had to be dragged here kicking and screaming. He's not doing this because he wants to or because he believes in it. He's doing this because he was forced to, forced partly by the Casey report and partly by the vote that we have scheduled in Parliament on Wednesday. Claimed we were part of a far-right bandwagon. That is a disgraceful smear. And in fact, when he said that, Keir Starmer was essentially perpetuating the same attitude that led to the cover-up in the first place.
I guess the first point just to acknowledge on this is you're saying he's been dragged into this decision 6 months late. You must acknowledge equally that your government didn't introduce this for 14 years previously.
Well, the last government did a lot. For example, initiating the Rotherham inquiry back in 2014, the independent inquiry into child sex abuse that was much wider but did cover this, that ran for 7 years.
He calmly, relentlessly walked Philp through every contradiction. Philp dodged, deflected and gulped all the way through.
Is Oldham Council said, look, we can't investigate this ourselves. We need a national inquiry, including into the cover-up. Now, the Labour government contemptuously dismissed that request by Oldham Council, and that became public in January, and that is when the campaign really began. Look,
I think it's very legitimate to criticise some of the framing of why an inquiry wasn't held over 6 months ago, and to say that perhaps this could have happened quicker on the last government. For you, essentially, what I'm hearing, the only legitimate excuse you have for not introducing a statutory national inquiry is that Oldham Council hadn't called for it yet.
Well, as I said, there were a whole load of things done by the previous
I get that, but you weren't, when you were in government as a junior minister or a senior minister in various different roles, calling for one then. And then the day the election passes, you change your tune. Essentially, you're saying the only difference is that Oldham Council called for it. As a government, you could have done this yourselves earlier. Well, just to be clear, I wasn't the Home Secretary and I wasn't the safeguarding minister. Your government... And it was only when this call by Oldham Council, and I only became Shadow Home Secretary in November. Fine. But you're here to speak for your party as a whole.
Yeah, and look, and within a few weeks of becoming Shadow Home Secretary, when Oldham Council's request became public, because Labour didn't mention it for a number of months, then we looked at what they were saying, what Oldham Council was saying, and the view that I reached as the new Shadow Home Secretary, and the view that Kemi Badenoch reached as the new leader of the Conservative Party, is that a statutory inquiry was necessary to get to the bottom of the cover-up.
And the more he talked, the worse it got. He even started accusing senior figures from his own party of misconduct without admitting any personal responsibility. It was spin so shameless it could have its own parking space at GB News.
There's a criminal offence called misconduct in public office, and I think those people, and I'm not talking about a handful, it's probably dozens or maybe hundreds of people in positions of authority over the years deliberately covered this up. I think they're guilty of that criminal offence and, frankly, should be going to prison. I'll give you one example.
Well, no, hold on, sorry. We're going to come in a moment to the Prime Minister's rhetoric towards you and people like you in a moment. But you were in authority. You're here to talk on respect for your party as a whole here. Your party was in government for 14 years, and you're saying that people in authority are responsible for this. And essentially what you're saying is the only thing that changed was that one council, a small council, said that this was necessary, and that changed your position to say there needs to be a national statutory inquiry. I mean, that's saying that you in authority weren't doing enough yourselves.
As I said, I became Shadow Home Secretary in November.
Fine, but then you were explicitly criticising your former colleagues in government who occupied government for 14 years.
No, I'm saying, look, I've already gone through the list of the things the last government did, right? The J inquiry, the Rotherham inquiry, the Grooming Gangs Task Force, the collection of ethnicity data.
But you're saying that an Oldham Council call for a national statutory inquiry was the only reason why the facts changed.
My view today is that all of those things the last government did were important, they were valid, but I think we need to go further. And I said that in Parliament. This is not news. I've said before that we should go further.
You said 2010, you said 2013. Surely that is the Conservative government at the time's responsibility, not Keir Starmer's.
Well, I've already listed all the things the last government did.
But they were not enough.
Yeah, they should have gone further.
And you said that the people in authority at the time may have shown criminal neglect.
So which
would be talking about your colleagues.
The people who deliberately... No, so people like, the then Home Secretaries initiated all of the inquiries I've described. The evidence...
Which were not sufficient.
The cover-ups that I've described by, for example, that police officer, by Oldham Social Services in 2010...
But if the Prime Minister is guilty of taking too long, 6 months, to initiate this statutory national inquiry, then you must acknowledge that the Conservative government, over 14 years, is also guilty of taking too long and not doing enough.
Well, I've already gone through, I think 3 times now, all of the things the last government did. The J inquiry, the Rotherham inquiry, the Grooming Gangs Task Force.
Are you saying you deserve praise for that and the government deserves criticism for 6 months of delays? Or do you also acknowledge, despite listing all of those things for 3 times, that it wasn't enough and that you deserve almost as much, if not more, criticism for not doing enough to stop this for 14 years?
No, I've gone through what the last government did, which was very, very extensive indeed.
So here's the key points. Emma, yes, she was unprepared, and it showed. Philp, he was over-prepared to lie. One wrecks confidence, the other wrecks credibility, and the difference between the 2 interviews was night and day. Nick Ferrari just wanted a soundbite. Wilfred Frost actually wanted accountability. And only one of them got a viral clip, but the other exposed a deeper truth. When ministers can't answer simple questions, it is embarrassing. But when they try to rewrite history on live TV, it can be dangerous. And what's worse is when they think that you're too stupid to notice. just like Miles Strider's doing in the video that's on screen now. So go watch that next. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.